Commander Veltar pressed his long fingers against the cold metal of his ship's control panel. His dark eyes stared at the empty space outside the window. Out there, somewhere in that black void, was a star system that nobody talked about anymore. Earth, the home world of humans. 20,000 years had passed since anyone heard from them. 20,000 years of silence. Veltar was old enough to remember the stories his grandfather told him. Stories about the humans who came to the galaxy with their small ships and big dreams. They were not the strongest race or the smartest, but they were stubborn. They never gave up, even when things looked bad. The humans had colonies on dozens of worlds back then. They traded with the Zephyrian Confederacy. They made deals with the Kethmori Empire. They even tried to make friends with the cold and distant Arcturus Collective. Some alien races liked them. Others thought they were too loud and too quick to fight. But everyone agreed that humans were here to stay. Then one day they were gone. Not all at once. Not in a war or an explosion. They just stopped talking. Ships stopped coming to trade. Their messages stopped reaching other worlds. When other races sent ships to check on human colonies, they found empty cities. The lights were still on. The machines were still running, but no humans anywhere. Earth was the strangest of all. When the first scout ships reached the Sol system, they found something impossible. Earth was still there, still blue and green and beautiful. But it was surrounded by a wall of energy that no ship could pass through. Any probe that touched the barrier simply disappeared. Any message sent toward Earth got no answer. The galaxy's best scientists studied the barrier for years. They could not understand how it worked or what powered it. Some said it was a weapon. Others thought it was a shield. A few crazy theories suggested it was a door to somewhere else. But after 50 years of trying, everyone gave up. Earth was declared a dead world. The barrier was marked as a space hazard on all star charts. The human colonies were divided up among the other races. The Zephyrians took the mining worlds because they needed the metals. Kethmori claimed the farm planets because their people were always hungry. Smaller races picked up the research stations and trade posts that humans had built. It was like humans had never existed at all. Veltar had been born long after the humans disappeared. He grew up hearing stories about them the way other children heard fairy tales. Strange creatures who came from a world of water and walked on only 2 legs. They had no fur, no scales, no natural weapons. But somehow they built ships that could cross the stars. Now Veltar commanded his own ship, the Starwind. On patrol duty in the outer rim of Zephyrian space. It was boring work most of the time. Check this system. Scan that asteroid field. Sure, no pirates were hiding in the dark between worlds. Pay was good, and the job was safe. Nothing exciting ever happened out here until today, Veltar was drinking his morning caf when the ship's computer started making noise. Warning sounds filled the bridge as his crew rushed to their stations. Commander called out his science officer. We're picking up something strange. Veltar set down his cup and walked over to look at the sensor display. Numbers and graphs covered the screen, but he could not make sense of what they meant. What am I looking at? He asked. Unknown energy signature, sir. It's big. Really big. And it's moving this way. Veltar felt his stomach tighten. In all his years of patrol duty, he had never seen an energy reading like this. The closest thing in the computer database was a star-going supernova. But there were no stars in that direction. Just empty space and the old human territories? Distance? He asked. 47 light-years in closing. Speed is... Commander, this can't be right. What? The computer says it's moving at 97% light speed. Nothing can go that fast without tearing itself apart. Veltar stared at the screen. Ships could travel faster than light by jumping through hyperspace, but they had to slow down to normal speeds when they came back to real space. No known material could survive. Moving that fast for very long? Are you sure the sensors are working right? I've run 3 full diagnostics, sir. Everything checks out. Whatever this thing is, it's real, and it's headed straight for the old human sector. A cold feeling crept up Veltar's spine. The human sector had been empty for 20,000 years. Nothing lived there anymore except automated mining platforms and survey drones. What could possibly be coming from that direction? Send a message to Fleet Command, he ordered. Tell them we've got an unknown contact approaching human space. Request instructions. Yes, sir. Veltar walked back to his chair and sat down. Outside the window, the stars looked the same as always, cold and distant and silent. But somewhere, out there in the dark, something was coming. Something big and fast and impossible. He thought about the old stories his grandfather used to tell. Stories about humans who never gave up, no matter how bad things got. Stories about a race that vanished without explanation, leaving behind only empty worlds and unanswered questions. Maybe, after 20,000 years of silence, they were finally about to get some answers. The computer beeped softly, marking another minute passed, another minute closer to whatever was coming their way. Veltar gripped the arms of his chair and waited. The message from Fleet Command came back 3 hours later. Admiral Kresh's voice crackled through the speakers, full of worry and confusion. All ships in Sector 7 proceed to the human boundary at best speed. Form defensive positions, but do not engage unless fired upon. We need to see what we're dealing with. Veltar watched his navigation officer plot a course to the edge of human space. Around them, other Zephyrian ships were doing the same thing. The Starwind was just a patrol vessel, but bigger warships were coming too. He could see them on the long-range sensors, cruisers, destroyers, even a dreadnought from the core worlds. Whatever was coming, the fleet was taking it seriously. The journey took 2 days. When they arrived at the human boundary, Veltar saw the largest gathering of ships he had ever witnessed. Not just Zephyrian vessels, but Kethmori battle cruisers and Arcturus defense platforms. Even the mysterious Veil Runners had sent a few of their shadow ships. The entire galaxy seemed to be holding its breath. Commander, his sensor operator, called out, "The contact just dropped out of hyperspace." Veltar looked at the main screen and felt his blood turn to ice. The ship that appeared before them was impossible. It stretched across space like a metal mountain, bigger than some space stations. Its hull was black as the void between stars, but it seemed to absorb light rather than just block it. Strange patterns of energy crawled across its surface like living things. "How big is that thing?" Veltar whispered. 12 kilometers long, sir. 4 kilometers wide. Mass readings are... I can't get a clear reading. Sensors keep changing their minds. Along the side of the massive ship, faded letters spelled out words in the old human language. ESV, Eternal Vigil. Below that, in smaller text, was something that made Veltar's hands shake. Earth Defense Corps. It's human, he breathed, but this was not the human technology he had learned about in school. Human ships were supposed to be small and crude, held together with metal plates and simple engines. This thing looked like it had been built by gods. Its hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Strange towers and spires jutted out at angles that hurt to look at. Energy fields danced around weapon ports that could swallow his entire ship. The communications array came alive with panicked chatter from dozens of ships. Everyone was asking the same questions. How was this possible? Where had the humans been for 20,000 years? What had they become? And the ghost ship spoke. The voice that came through every speaker in the fleet was not quite human anymore. It sounded like 1,000 people talking at once, their words layered together into something that was both beautiful and terrifying. "This is the ESV Eternal Vigil," the voice said. "We have returned to reclaim what was taken from us. All vessels in former human territories have 72 standard hours to withdraw. This is your only warning." Admiral Kresh's voice cut through the shocked silence. "Unknown vessel. This is Admiral Kresh of the Zephyrian Confederacy. Territories were legally claimed after your people abandoned them. We demand to speak with your commanding officer." The response came immediately, cold and final. "There is no commanding officer. There is only us. We are the children of Earth, changed by necessity and purpose. You have 71 hours and 57 minutes remaining." A Kethmori battlecruiser, the Pride of Kethmor, moved forward. Veltar knew its captain, a warrior named Vask, who had never backed down from a fight in his life. One ship against the combined fleet of 3 empires? Ask. voice boomed across the communication channels. "You are brave, but foolish. Humans. Surrender now, and we will listen to your claims." The human ship's response was not words, but action. Energy beams lanced out from the Eternal Vigil. But they did not destroy the Kethmori cruiser. Instead, they wrapped around it like glowing ropes. The massive warship, all 800 meters, of armored death, was gently but firmly pushed backward. Its engines screamed at full power, trying to break free, but they might as well have been fighting a moon. "Weapon systems offline," came that shocked report. "Engines responding, but ineffective. They're not hurting us, but we can't move." More ships tried to approach. Energy fields reached out and caught them all, holding them in place like insects in a spider's web. The most advanced weapons in the galaxy fired on the human ship. Plasma. Cannons that could melt asteroids. Gravity bombs that could tear apart space itself. Quantum torpedoes that existed in several dimensions at once. Nothing worked. The attacks either bounced off the ship's hull or simply disappeared into energy fields that seemed to eat them up. The Eternal Vigil sat in space like a mountain, unmoved and untouchable. "This is impossible," whispered Veltar's science officer. "No known technology can do this." But the humans were not finished with their demonstration. The black ship began to change. Its hull flowed like water, reshaping itself. New weapons appeared and disappeared. The energy patterns on its surface grew brighter, forming symbols that no computer could translate. Then it spoke again, and this time the voice was sad. "We did not want to return. For 20,000 years we have stood guard in the darkness, protecting worlds that forgot we existed. But the time of hiding is over. The enemy we have fought for so long has finally turned its attention to inhabited space." "What enemy?" Admiral Kresh demanded. "You will know soon enough. Withdraw from our territories. We need every world, every resource, every shipyard that humanity ever built. The galaxy's survival depends on it." Transmission cut off, leaving the combined fleet floating in stunned silence. The Eternal Vigil released its hold on the captured ships and simply waited, patient as death itself. Veltar stared at the impossible vessel and wondered what the humans had become during their long absence. Whatever they were now, they were. No longer the species that had left the galaxy 20,000 years ago. They were something else entirely, something that scared him more than any enemy he had ever faced. Dr. Zena Korath had spent her whole life studying dead civilizations. She was good at reading the stories that ruins told, finding meaning in broken walls and scattered bones. Standing in the abandoned human city on Kepler Prime, she felt like she was missing something important. The evacuation order had come down from the highest levels of government. All alien settlements in former human space had to be abandoned within 72 hours. But the Science Council had convinced the military to let small research teams stay behind, hidden in the ruins of old human colonies. They needed to understand what the humans had become, and maybe find clues about this mysterious enemy they claimed to be fighting. Zena's team had been studying human ruins for 3 days now. What they found made no sense. "Look at this," called her assistant Peck from across the excavation site, who was standing next to a wall covered in strange markings. "These symbols weren't here yesterday." Zena hurried over to examine the wall. Peck was right. Fresh markings had appeared on the ancient stone, glowing faintly with their own light. They looked like human writing, but changed somehow, more complex. The letters seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them. "The translation computer can't make sense of them," Peck said. "It keeps giving different answers every time I scan the same symbol." Zena touched one of the glowing marks with her finger. The moment her skin made contact, images flooded her mind. She saw Earth as it had been 20,000 years ago, blue and green and beautiful. She saw humans working frantically on massive construction projects, building something enormous in the darkness between planets. She jerked her hand back, gasping. "What did you see?" Peck asked. "Fear," she whispered.
Us.
They were afraid of something coming from outside the galaxy, something terrible, or teams were making similar discoveries on other human worlds. Ancient buildings that had stood empty for millennia were suddenly showing signs of activity. Lights turned on in the darkness. Computers that had been dead for thousands of years began broadcasting incomprehensible data streams. It was as if the planets themselves were waking up. On the industrial world of Haven's Rest, an archaeological team found something even stranger. Deep underground, in the ruins of what had once been humanity's largest spaceship factory, they discovered a vast chamber filled with construction equipment. The machines were building something, working day and night without any visible control. System. They're making weapon components, reported Dr. Vom, the team leader. Huge ones. Each piece is the size of a small ship. But the design, I've never seen anything like it. The pieces being built look like they came from nightmares. Twisted metal shapes that seemed to bend space around them. Energy conduits that pulsed with dark light. Armor plating that absorbed scanner beams and gave nothing back. "How long have these machines been running?" asked Admiral Kresh during the emergency briefing. "That's the problem, sir," Dr. Vom replied through the communication link. "Carbon dating suggests they started working again exactly 72 hours ago, right when the human ship appeared. The same pattern was repeating across dozens of worlds. Human technology that had been dormant for 20,000 years was coming back to life. That no alien science could understand. It was as if the entire human empire was preparing for war. But the most disturbing discovery came from a team studying Earth's solar system from a safe distance. They couldn't get past the energy barrier that surrounded the planet. But their long-range sensors had detected something impossible. "The barrier isn't just protecting Earth," reported Dr. Millax, the expedition's chief scientist. "It's hiding something enormous. Mass readings suggest there are artificial structures in the solar system that dwarf anything we've ever built. Some of them are bigger than moons." The team had also found evidence of massive energy discharges coming from the outer edges of the solar system. Signatures didn't match any known weapon type, but they were clearly directed outward toward the empty space between galaxies. "They've been fighting something out there," Dr. Millax continued. "For 20,000 years, they've been shooting at targets we can't even see." Intelligence analysts began piecing together a picture that terrified them. The humans hadn't abandoned the galaxy. They had hidden themselves away to fight a war that nobody else knew was happening. While other races divided up their colonies and forgot they ever existed, humanity had been standing guard against something from the dark spaces beyond the stars. The evidence was everywhere once they knew what to look for. Deep space monitoring. Stations in the void between galaxies, their signals so weak they had been mistaken for cosmic background radiation. Weapon platforms built into asteroids at the very edge of explored space. Their barrels pointed not at inhabited worlds, but at the empty darkness beyond. Most disturbing of all were the messages. Ancient human communication relays were suddenly active again, broadcasting on frequencies so low they were almost undetectable. The messages were encrypted. But computer analysis revealed that they contained tactical information, battle reports, casualty lists stretching back 20,000 years. The humans had been at war this entire time, a war against something so dangerous that they had sacrificed everything to fight it. Their civilization, their individuality, their very humanity had been transformed into a weapon system designed for one purpose: to keep the galaxy safe from whatever lurked in the spaces between worlds. Xena stood in the abandoned human city, watching strange lights dance across the ancient buildings. Around her, alien evacuation ships were leaving the planet, carrying away 20,000 years of settlement and development. But she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't really an evacuation. It was humanity finally coming home. And they were bringing a war with them that the rest of the galaxy wasn't ready to fight. The communication device on her belt crackled to life. It was a general broadcast from the Eternal Vigil, transmitted to every ship and every world in the galaxy. "People of the stars," the layered human voice said, "we know you are confused and afraid. We know our return seems like a threat to the lives you have built. But understand this, for 20,000 years, we have held the line against an enemy that would devour worlds like yours without thought or mercy. That enemy has finally turned its attention to inhabited space. The war we have fought in silence is about to become everyone's war. We need your help. But more than that, you need ours. The time for hiding is over. The time for silence has ended. What comes next will determine whether any of us survive to see another dawn. The transmission cut off, leaving Xena alone with the glowing ruins and the terrible knowledge that everything was about to change in the distance. Human machines continued their work, building weapons for a war that no one understood but everyone would have to fight. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came from the Deep Space Observatory on Titan Station, Dr. Nexus. A Veil Runner scientist known for his calm nature sent out a priority alert that made every military commander in the galaxy stop what they were doing. Long-range sensors are detecting movement in the void, his report said. Something massive is approaching from outside our galaxy. Estimated time of arrival, 6 standard days. Commander Veltar was still stationed near the human boundary when the news came through. He'd been watching the eternal vigil for days now, trying to understand how the massive ship worked. Sometimes it seemed solid as a mountain. Other times, parts of it appeared to fade in and out of reality like a ghost.
Sir,
his sensor operator called out, "We're getting readings from the edge of the galaxy. You need to see this." Veltar walked over to the sensor station and looked at the display. What he saw made his stomach drop. A dark shape was moving through the empty space between galaxies, heading straight for their spiral arm. The computer couldn't give him exact measurements because the thing seemed to change size every time the sensors looked at it. "How big is it?" he asked. "That's the problem, Commander. Sometimes it looks like a large ship. Sometimes it looks like a small moon. And sometimes," the operator's voice trailed off. "Sometimes what?" "Sometimes it looks like it's bigger than our entire solar system." Similar reports were coming in from observatories across the galaxy. The approaching entity defied every law of physics that alien science understood, moved without engines, generated no heat signature, and seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Worst of all, everywhere it passed, space itself began to change. Stars near its path started burning different colors. Planets shifted in their orbits for no reason. In one system, all the moons of a gas giant suddenly began orbiting backward. Whatever this thing was, its very presence was breaking the rules that held the universe together. The eternal vigil responded to the approaching threat by doing something that shocked every observer. The massive human ship began to split apart. Sections of its hull peeled away like flower petals, revealing that it wasn't one ship at all. It was hundreds of smaller vessels, all connected together, each one the size of a battleship. But these weren't normal ships either. As they separated, they began to change shape, their hulls flowing like liquid metal. Some became long and thin like spears. Others grew wide and flat like shields. Few transformed into shapes that hurt to look at, their geometry seeming to exist in more than 3 dimensions. The human voice spoke again, broadcast to every ship in the galaxy. "The Devourers have found you," it said. "They are older than your oldest civilizations. They have consumed 1,000 galaxies before this one. They turn matter into energy and energy into hunger. They will not stop until every star is cold and every world is empty." Admiral Kresh, commanding the combined alien fleet, sent a desperate message to the human ship. "What do they want? Can we negotiate with them?" The response came back immediately, filled with something that might have been sadness. "They want everything. They are not alive in any way you understand. They're hunger itself. Given form and purpose, negotiation is impossible. They cannot be reasoned with, bargained with, or turned aside. They can only be fought." As if responding to the conversation, the approaching entity suddenly accelerated. The dark shape shot forward at speeds that should have been impossible, crossing light years in minutes. When it finally slowed down at the edge of the galaxy, everyone could see what humanity had been fighting for 20,000 years. It wasn't a ship or a creature. It was something far worse. The entity looked like a massive storm made of living darkness, stretching across space like a hungry shadow. Inside the dark cloud, flashes of terrible light revealed glimpses of structures that made no sense. Buildings that were built inside out, machines that seemed to be eating themselves. geometric shapes that existed in too many dimensions. Where the entity touched the edge of the galaxy, stars began to go out. Not exploding or burning out naturally, but simply ceasing to exist. The darkness consumed them completely, leaving behind empty space that felt wrong to look at.
It's feeding,
whispered Dr. Malax from his observation post. It's actually eating the stars. The human ships moved to intercept the entity, but they looked impossibly small against the vast darkness. Weapons that could destroy planets fired into the shadow and seemed to have no effect. Energy beams that could crack moons simply disappeared into the hungry void. But the humans weren't fighting the way anyone expected. Instead of attacking the entity directly, they began building something in space. The smaller ships worked together, their hulls connecting and reshaping until they formed a massive structure that stretched across several star systems. "What are they making?" asked Veltar. His science officer studied the readings with confusion. "It looks like ... a cage, sir. They're building a cage around the entity." The cage was made of pure energy, held in place by technology that bent space and time. But even as the humans worked to contain it, the entity was changing the rules of reality around itself. Matter became energy. Energy became something else entirely. The laws of physics started breaking down wherever the darkness touched. Worse, the entity was learning. Each time the humans attacked, it adapted. Each time they tried a new strategy, the darkness found a way around it. This wasn't just a battle between ships and weapons. It was a war between different kinds of existence itself. "Now you understand," the human voice said over the communication channels. "This is why we changed ourselves. This is why we gave up. Our bodies, our individual minds, our humanity. To fight something like this, we had to become something like this." The entity pulsed with dark energy, and suddenly every electronic device in the alien fleet began malfunctioning. Computer screens showed impossible images. Gravity generators created fields that pointed in directions that didn't exist. Ships simply stopped working for no reason at all. "It's affecting our technology," reported Admiral Kresh. "Weapon systems are failing. Navigation is down. We can't even maintain formation." The human response was swift. Energy fields reached out from their ships, surrounding the alien vessels and protecting them from the entity's influence. But Veltar could see that the effort was costing the humans dearly. Their ships were dimming, their energy readings dropping. "We can't protect us and fight that thing at the same time," he realized. The entity seemed to understand this too. It pressed forward, pushing against the human defenses with waves of pure darkness. Each attack made reality shiver. Each pulse of dark energy made the stars themselves flicker like candle flames in a wind. "People of the galaxy," the human voice said, and for the first time it sounded tired. "We need your help. Not your weapons or your ships. We need your minds. Your thoughts, your will to exist. This enemy feeds on reality itself, but reality is shaped by consciousness. The more minds that believe the universe should stay the way it is, the harder it becomes for them to change it." Veltar didn't fully understand what the humans were asking for. But as he watched the darkness pressing closer to inhabited space, he knew that understanding didn't matter. All that mattered was that 20,000 years of human sacrifice was about to be tested in a battle that would determine whether consciousness itself survived in the universe. The real war was just beginning. Commander Veltar closed his eyes and tried to understand what the humans were asking him to do: think, believe, hold on to the idea that the universe should stay the way it was. It sounded simple, but as the darkness pressed closer to inhabited space, he could feel reality starting to bend around him. His ship's metal walls rippled like water. The air tasted like colors he had never seen. When he looked at his hands, sometimes they had 3 fingers, sometimes 7. The entity was rewriting the rules of existence just by being there. All ships, all stations. Admiral Kresh's voice crackled over the communication system. "The humans are right. Our weapons can't hurt this thing, but our minds might be able to stop it. Focus on what you know is real. Remember your home worlds. Remember your families. Don't let this darkness change what you believe." Across the galaxy, billions of minds turned their attention to the battle at the edge of space. Zephyrians remembered the cold beauty of their ice cities. Keth Mori thought about the vast forests of their birth world. Veil Runners focused on the quiet darkness between stars that had always been their home. But it wasn't enough. The entity pushed forward, and with each pulse of dark energy, more stars went out. Whole solar systems simply stopped existing, leaving behind empty spaces that hurt to think about. "We're losing," reported Dr. Millax from his observation post. "The entity's too strong. It's been doing this for millions of years. We're just one more galaxy to it." That was when the Eternal Vigil did something that no one expected. The massive, human ship began to broadcast not words, but memories. Raw human experiences flooded into every mind in the galaxy. Suddenly, aliens who had never seen Earth found themselves remembering blue skies and green grass. They felt the warmth of a sun they had never known. They heard the laughter of human children who had been gone for 20,000 years. But these weren't just happy memories. The humans shared everything. The terror they felt when they first detected the approaching entity. The pain of giving up their individual bodies to become something that could fight the darkness. The loneliness of standing guard in empty space. While the galaxy they protected forgot they existed, Veltar gasped as human emotions flooded through him. He felt their love for worlds they would never see again. Their determination to protect life they would never be part of. Their willingness to sacrifice everything, even their own humanity, to keep the universe safe. "Now you understand," the layered human voice said, and it sounded like crying and laughing at the same time. "This is what we gave up. This is what we became, not because we wanted to, but because someone had to stand guard." The shared memories had an unexpected effect. Instead of weakening the alien resolve, they made it stronger. Zephyrians began thinking not just about their own ice cities, but about the warm human cities they had seen in the memories. Keth Mori added human forests to their own vast woodlands. Every species in the galaxy found their sense of what was. Real expanded to include things they had never experienced, but now remembered. The entity paused in its advance. For the first time since the battle began, the darkness seemed uncertain. It had consumed thousands of galaxies, but it had never encountered anything like this before. A collective consciousness made up of dozens of different species, all believing. In the same expanded version of reality, "It's working," whispered his science officer. "The entity is having trouble changing things. There are too many minds believing in what already exists." But the humans weren't finished. The Eternal Vigil began to break apart again, but this time the separated ships moved toward the alien fleet. Each human vessel connected with an alien ship, their hulls merging in ways that should have been impossible. Veltar watched in amazement. As a section of the human ship bonded with the Starwind, his simple patrol vessel suddenly became something else entirely. Its hull flowed and changed, gaining new weapons and defenses that he couldn't understand. But more importantly, he could feel human thoughts mixing with his own. The same thing was happening across the fleet. Human consciousness merged with alien minds, creating something new. Not human, not alien, but a combination of both. Each species brought their own way of understanding the universe. While humanity provided the knowledge and technology needed to fight the entity, "We are no longer separate," the voice said. But now it wasn't just human anymore. Veltar could hear his own species in it and dozens of others. "We are one mind, one purpose, one belief in what should be." The entity attacked with everything it had, sending waves of dark energy that tried to tear apart the fabric of space itself. But the combined consciousness pushed back. Every time the darkness tried to change the rules, billions of minds insisted that the rules should stay the same. Reality became a battlefield. The entity would make gravity flow upward, and the combined fleet would believe it should flow down. The darkness would try to make time run backward, and countless voices would demand that it move forward. Stars that the entity tried to consume would suddenly flare back to life as entire civilizations refused to let them die. The battle raged for hours that felt like years. Neither side could gain a permanent advantage. The entity was ancient and powerful, but the combined consciousness was something it had never faced before. Not just one species fighting for survival, but dozens of races working together. sharing their hopes and dreams and stubborn refusal to give up. Finally, the darkness began to retreat, not because it was destroyed, but because it could no longer change reality in a galaxy where so many minds were united in believing what should be real. "It's leaving," reported Dr. Millax, hardly believing his own sensors. "The entity is returning to the void between galaxies." But Veltar could feel through the connection that this wasn't a victory. It was just a pause. The entity would go somewhere else, try to consume some other galaxy, and eventually it would return. "What happens now?" he asked through the mental link. "Now we change everything," came the reply from the human part of the collective consciousness. "No more hiding. There's no more silence. The galaxy has seen what's out there in the dark. We stand together or we fall alone." In the months that followed, the galaxy transformed itself. The old empires and confederations dissolved, replaced by something new. The United Consciousness, they called it. Not a government ruled by force, but a voluntary joining of minds dedicated to protecting reality itself. The eternal vigil returned to its watch in the deep void. But it was no longer alone. Ships from every species joined the patrol, their crews, linked through human technology that preserved their individuality while connecting their thoughts. Earth's barrier finally came down, revealing a world that had become something between a planet and a space station. Humans still lived there, but not as they once had. They existed as points of light in vast computer networks, where consciousness preserved and expanded beyond anything their ancestors could have imagined. Veltar, now captain of a ship that was part alien technology and part human innovation, often thought about the old stories his grandfather had told him. Stories about humans who never gave up, no matter how bad things got. His grandfather had been right. The humans never did give up. They just changed what it meant to be human until they became something that could protect everyone else. And in the darkness between galaxies, ancient eyes watched and waited, knowing that eventually they would return. But when they did, they would face not one species standing alone, but an entire galaxy united in the simple, stubborn belief that consciousness should survive. The war was far from over. But for the first time in 20,000 years, humanity was not fighting it alone.